All right, let's dive into something that trips up so many of us, the healthy junk food myth. We're going to unpack how some of these foods, the ones marketed as being great for us, might actually be hiding a pretty big secret.
I mean, this is the big question, isn't it? You're standing in the grocery aisle, looking at a package, and you wonder, can this actually be a good choice? The marketing sure wants you to think so.
Take these, for example, high-protein bars and snacks. They're everywhere, right? Pitched as the perfect guilt-free option for when you're busy, a super easy way to get that protein in. Or what about these? All those vitamin-enriched or so-called functional drinks. They promise you everything. A stronger immune system, more energy, all your essential nutrients right there in one bottle. And then, of course, there's the whole plant-based revolution. These meat alternatives, they're sold to us as being inherently healthier. A win for you, a win for the planet. But are they really as wholesome as they seem? To figure that out, we really need to change the way we look at food entirely. It might be time to stop focusing just on the nutrients plastered on the front of the box.
This quote from the scientist Carlos Montero, well, it changes the whole game. It suggests that maybe our obsession with protein or vitamins or fat has been missing the point. The real story, the thing that's actually affecting our health, is all about the processing.
And that brings us to this really crucial idea, ultra-processed foods, or UPFs. Now, it's so important to get this. This isn't a food group like carbs or fats. Nope. UPFs are industrial formulas. They're made from substances pulled out of foods, mixed with a bunch of additives, and engineered to taste amazing and last forever on a shelf. The key thing, there's often very little or even zero actual whole food in them.
The NOVA classification system shows this perfectly. Think of it as a scale from 1 to 4. As you can see, Group 1 is just whole foods, an apple, a piece of chicken. Group 2 is stuff we cook with, like oil or salt. Group 3 is simply processed, like canned beans. But you really got to pay attention to Group 4. That's the ultra-processed stuff. And its purpose isn't just about nutrition, it's designed for convenience, profit, and something called hyperpalatability. Basically a flavor so intense and perfectly engineered that it's almost impossible to stop eating it.
So what actually happens when our diet is full of these Group 4 foods? Well, the scientific evidence is huge, and honestly, it's pretty alarming. The data really tells the story here. 92. Just let that number sink in. Out of 104 massive studies, a whopping 92 of them linked eating a lot of ultra-processed foods to at least one bad health outcome. In the world of science, that's what you call a powerful consensus. It's a big deal.
And we're not talking about small problems. The risks tied to diets high in UPFs are really serious. We're talking about obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, some types of cancer, mental health issues, and even a higher risk of dying from any cause.
And here's the thing. This isn't some niche problem affecting a few people. In countries like the US and the UK, ultra-processed foods now make up more than half of the average person's diet. That's just staggering. It means this has gone from being a personal choice to a massive public health crisis.
Okay, so if the evidence is so crystal clear, how on earth does this myth of the healthy UPF even exist? Well, it kind of comes down to how the research is sometimes designed and, more importantly, how it's presented.
The real heart of the issue is a sneaky little concept called an inappropriate comparator. See, in science, what you compare something to is every bit as important as the thing you're actually studying. This is a perfect example. A flawed study might ask, is a sugary, ultra-processed fruit yogurt better for you than a pile of cookies and a can of soda? And yeah, it probably is. But that's the wrong comparison. It's a low bar. The real scientific question, the one that actually matters, is this. Is that ultra-processed yogurt better than its minimally processed cousin, plain yogurt with some actual fresh fruit thrown in? And the answer to that is almost always a hard no.
And it's not just that. These kinds of studies are often riddled with other problems. There's confounding, which means maybe the people who choose healthy UPFs also happen to exercise more. There's low statistical power, so there just isn't enough data on some of these foods to say anything for sure. And then there's misclassification, where the food surveys people fill out just can't tell the difference between a processed food and an ultra-processed one.
So, after wading through all this complexity, what's the simple, clear thing you can actually do? Well, it turns out it's wonderfully simple.
This quote really just puts everything in perspective. The point isn't to try and find the least bad ultra-processed food on the shelf.
The real crisis is the entire global shift away from whole foods and towards these industrial products. That's the big picture we can't afford to miss.
And that brings us to probably the simplest, most powerful, and most evidence-backed piece of advice you could ever get. Eat real food. Avoid ultra-processed food. It just cuts through all the noise, all the marketing, the confusing labels, and the flawed science.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. In this world of really complex labels and clever marketing, what if the real answer is way simpler than we thought? What if the healthiest choice isn't about comparing one package to another, but about choosing the food that doesn't even need a package in the first place?